cash, realtor, and keeping it. You have to disqualify all three of those things before I will jump on the phone with a seller to close your creative deal. You're not asking, hey, do me a favor and sell it to me on seller finance from a position of
Right.
weakness, because you don't have a creative deal until you've ruled out cash, realtor, and keeping it. You have to disqualify the other stuff in order for it to be a creative finance deal, because they're always going to be like, this is weird. Can't we just do a cash offer? And I want this on record. You guys screen clip this, share it, whatever you want to do, because this needs to get out there. Until the seller has ruled out cash, like a real cash offer that you can deliver on, the cash has to not work. The seller has to reject it. I don't care if you know the cash doesn't work. I care that the seller knows that the cash doesn't work. And the seller is the one that disqualifies the cash offer. They refuse the cash offer. Until they've refused it, you haven't passed cash. Cash, cash, cash terms is last. Until the seller has ruled out the realtor or the MLS that's not working for some reason, or they don't want it to. Plenty of reasons. Won't pass inspection. It's been on the market too long. Unrealistic price expectations. They're going to lose money if they bring their price down. Cash doesn't work. MLS or realtor doesn't work for whatever reason, but it has to be the seller's reason, not yours. I don't care how smart you are. You can know all the things in the world, but you're not going to make a sale if the other person doesn't make the decision. And the third thing is keeping it. Cash, realtor, and keeping it. You have to disqualify all three of those things before I will jump on the phone with a seller to close your creative deal, because you don't have a creative deal until you've ruled out cash, realtor, and keeping it. I said you, I mean the seller. The seller has to rule out cash, realtor, and keeping it, and they still need to want to sell or need to sell. When that is true, you have a creative deal on your hands, and you've turned the entire paradigm on its head. You're not asking to buy, they're asking you to buy. You're not asking, hey, do me a favor and sell it to me on seller finance from a position of
Right.
weakness. They're saying, I need to sell this. None of those options work. What can you do for me? And then you get to set the terms. This is what I can do. What do you need? What do you have to have? And they're going to say, well, I need $200,000 down payment. Do you need that or do you want that? Let's work together. Instead of being on opposite sides of the table, negotiating against each other, this is what I love about creative finance. I get to come around the table and go shoulder to shoulder with him and say, how can we solve your problem together? So you're throwing some numbers at me, and it sounds like a scenario where there's too many people involved who haven't ruled out cash, realtor, and keeping it. Am I on the right track?
You are. It's beautiful.
Well,
It's ready to go. It's refurbished and everything.
let me do the math and see if it breaks my rule. I'm guessing it does. 275,000 divided by 949,000 is 28%. That's inside my red zone. Mid-equity deal, not a deal. If I have to make a go or no go decision based on the numbers you just tossed at me, I'm not spending any more time on this deal. I'm going to talk to somebody else.
Okay. How do I
Because
make it a deal?
the exceptions are if you've got an extremely high cash flow from Airbnb, and or the seller is willing to accept very low or no payments for a period of time. It doesn't mean that they have to reduce their equity or their price. It just means that they have to not take as big of payments. You have to be able to afford to cash flow, or it's not a deal. So unless you know that they're going to let you make $200 a month payments instead of $600 a month.
A bed and breakfast, but it could be done a few different ways. It's like 2 units, 2 bedrooms, and I believe a kitchen in each unit. And then there's the ADU in the basement that's permitted.
So take this as me being like rude or anything like that. You're planning an exit when you haven't even seen a valid entry. You're looking
Okay.
at ways to exit before you've negotiated an entry. Cash, cash, cash terms is last. Have you made the cash offer? Have you figured the ARV and your max allowable offer and made a cash offer that you can actually perform on?
No, that's why I was asking you.
But you made that all happen in your head and you didn't talk to the seller with that number? Because I've been there. I've been like, oh, they'll never accept this. And I don't even bother.
You
But
know,
I've wasted
I didn't
so
offer.
many dozens
Maybe
of
I should.
hours talking to sellers about creative because I already knew the cash offer wouldn't work. But the epiphany for me came after so many wasted hours that, you know what? They keep wanting to go back to cash. So how about I and the Sandler submarine, they have to disqualify cash so that we can move on to the next stage. And if something breaks down, if you've not read, you need to keep how to teach a kid. You can't teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar. I butchered that. If you haven't read that book, you need to. If you haven't listened to it, I listened to it. I've probably listened to it 6 times. I need to listen to it probably once every 2 months. It's got the compartments of the submarine. As you close a door, you move on. The cash offer is one of those first compartments. You build your rapport and all those things, but the cash offer is one of those things. It's like a sub compartment. You have to close it before you go to creative. And if and when they start challenging something, oh, you know what? I must have missed something here because I thought we already talked about cash and that didn't work for you. Well, because they're
Wow.
always creative finance is weird. Another thing, quote me, put me on record. Creative finance is weird. So you have to disqualify the other stuff in order for it to be a creative finance deal because they're always going to be like, this is weird. Can't we just do a cash offer? Well, if you didn't have that discussion and if they didn't rule it out, you can't lean back on, well, we already know my max number and that was not a deal, right? And that's an easy you go back to that compartment or reclose the door. If they really want to open back up, the weirder it gets, the more they're going to want to pull back and go back to the cash offer. Like that's simple. My credit's not involved anymore. I don't have to wait on payments. I don't have to trust you to make payments over time. Just pay me off. Okay. So what's that worth to you? Because the price has to come down to a point where I can afford to do that. So you may have to continue going back to cash and disqualifying it because it gets weird as you get more and more creative.
Makes sense. Wow.
Yep.
You're good at what you do, man.
I wouldn't
I
even
wish someone
bother
could.
planning an exit strategy until you've gone the wholesale route. Do the cash offer. You can spend a lot of time chasing. And I can tell by the way you're talking, you've got a plan for this property
Oh
that
yeah, I do. It's
you've
more
already.
sentimental for me
Yep.
because I know the area. It's a great location.
We
We've
fall
been
in love with an idea that hasn't
right.
happened yet, and we got to run through the paces to get it to where it's going to be.